Hello, welcome back. Today I'm doing a little bit of an experiment. I've had Northern Lights in my brain. I've seen a few different projects online and decided to experiment and play around and see if I can create something for myself. So I have a wood panel that I've already painted black. Note for the future, if I was to ever do this again, I would paint it navy first instead of black. But yeah, so I'm using these two colors to start out with. I will list them down below. They are from Mad Micas, and they're really pretty colors actually. So I'm going to put my first layer down of just clear. I'm going to cover the entire board with clear resin, making sure it's completely covered all over the sides and all over the surface. I don't want to have any part of that wood panel showing. And by rubbing it all over the sides, it's going to flow, any excess that flows over the side is going to flow down a little bit more evenly than if I didn't do that. So once I have my base completely covered, including all of the sides, I am going to put those two colors down. I think I'm done taking my gloves off. Now I'm popping any of the air bubbles that have risen to the surface. So I've got the heat gun just on a low setting. And then I'm gonna pour my two colors. So the tealy colored first. And then I'm popping the air bubbles. I decided to blow the tealy color out a little bit. And again, for future, I wouldn't do this because as the resin's curing, it's gonna start flowing and blending anyways. And by doing this, I ended up spreading it more than I really actually wanted. But like I said, this is an experiment. It's a learning lesson and I know what to do and what not to do next time. So now I've got my purple color down. And now this is day 2. I'm putting these two colors down. So I've got my clear resin. I'm going to completely cover the project with the clear. So I'm doing this in several layers over several days because I want to try build up a little bit of depth. I don't want it to be quite as flat. So I did 3 different layers with different colors of micas in them to try to create the Northern Lights. And then after that, I added a few other elements. So again, I'm just spreading all the clear all over the surface, making sure it's completely covered and there's no open spots. You could do this with a silicone tool as well, but it's much easier to do it with your hand with a glove on, obviously. So now I'm popping all the little bubbles that have risen to the surface. And then I'm going to pour my blue color. And I'm doing pretty much the same pattern as I did the day before. This time I will use my heat gun to pop the bubbles, but I won't be using it to spread anything because I've realized that I don't want it to spread quite as much as it did the day before. So now I'm putting my pink down. I really love this pink. It's got a bit of a blue undertone to it. I really quite loved it. And I want to make sure those mica colors pour over the edge as well. I don't want to have a black solid edge color. So now we're on day 3 and I want to do kind of a lime green color, and I actually didn't have any lime green mica powder, so I'm taking a few that I do have and just mixing them together to try get close to the color that I'm wanting. So this is the first little bit and it was a little bit too leafy green for my liking, so I'm going to add a little bit of yellow mica. And make sure to mix it all together. And that's a little bit closer. I decided to add this iridescent green color as well, just to get it a little bit lighter, a little bit more of a limey green color. So pouring the clear all over the surface, and once again, spreading it all over, making sure it's covering the sides. And I have my piece propped up on some paint pyramids so that the resin is dropping down below so it's not pooling around the base of my panel. Scrape as much of the excess resin out of that cup and then spread it all over, making sure there's no open spaces. And then we're going to use the heat gun and we're going to pop all of the air bubbles that have risen to the surface. And then pour the lime green down. And once again, this time I'll pop the little bubbles, but I won't be blowing it out. I want it to stay close-ish to where I've put it. I want it to spread a little bit, but I want it to do it on its own. And I do have that little green blob in the center. I do end up blowing that out a little bit because it's just a little bit too concentrated in that one area. So this is the next day. I've got a splatter brush and some white craft paint. I'm going to splatter stars on the top. In the end, I did it once and it was I had too many blobs, so I watered the paint down a little bit. So this is actually my second try at it. I just want really light specks. I don't want really large blobs. So I'm going to take my finger, it's damp, and I'm just kind of flattening some of the bigger white spots just to kind of mute them a little bit. Again, I don't want them to be too big. In hindsight, this could have been done like with a sparkle or whatever as well, as since I'm making them stars, like, or I could have done them like in a gold color as well. But yeah. So I'm gonna let that completely dry, and then I'm taking a fan brush and some black, and I am going to paint in some trees. This is actually the first time I've painted these trees before. I've watched them a lot, but this is the first time I've actually painted them, and I was quite happy with how they turned out. Wanted to have something as kind of a bit of a silhouette in front of the sky background, so you could kind of get a bit of a better idea of what exactly it was. So I do have this video sped up so that it goes a little bit quicker, but you're just going to fill in the bottom about a third with the trees until you have them the way that you like. I did do a tiny little bit of painting on the sides of the panel. I didn't actually create trees, but I didn't want them to only be on the surface and not carry over to the side. So I did add that, making some of them taller. I don't want all of the tree tops to be at the same height. I want them to be different heights. It's a little bit more realistic that way. And then any of the micas that are popping through towards the bottom of the trees, I'm going to paint that whole bottom part black so that that is completely covered. I let that paint completely dry, and then I'm covering it with what I thought at that point was one last layer of resin, but I do have to add one more layer after this, which I didn't film because it's going to be exactly the same as all the other layers that you've seen. This one though is just clear. I'm not adding any mica bits to it. I do decide to use a glitter duster and dust some glitter over top of it just to add a little bit of sparkle to that sky. So I'm popping all the little heat bubble, or the little bubbles that have risen to the surface with my heat gun. And then I have this fairy duster with glitter in it that I'm going to just dust a little bit of glitter on top of the resin. And there's got to be a secret with these glitter dusters because I fight with them each and every single time. Some comes out, but it doesn't come out as much as I think it's supposed to. So I dusted the top, and then I used my heat gun, and it didn't really, like, I could see the glitter on the surface, so I'm using my silicone tool to try to mix it in a little bit, which worked for the most part, but there is some dimples in the surface, which is why I had to add an extra layer. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit the subscribe and notifications button to hear more.